Going to arrive to today's discussion on overcoming the overwhelm and self-regulation with a self-regulation practice such as breathing. So we're going to take a second to create a hand mudra here. You're going to bring your index finger and your middle finger in, and you're going to plug your right nostril. So we're going to breathe in the right or in the left, out the right, and out the left. So breathing in, plug, breathe out, breathe in, plug, breathe out, breathe in, plug, breathe out. This is called anulome vilome. It also builds immunity. It cleanses the channels of the mind, and it balances the hemisphere of the brain, the right and the left. So just taking a moment to breathe right and left. And maybe you notice an airway is more open than another, or maybe you feel completely balanced. If you feel called, you can start to close your eyes. And wherever you are with your breath, notice it, refraining from labeling or judging it, and just allowing it to be what it is. Now, the left is associated with the feminine, and the right is associated with the masculine. So notice if you feel more open or if there's any congestion, just notice right to left. Breathing out the nose, exploring the subtle energetic cues here of the body. I'm just taking a moment to ground your nervous system, bringing that mind-body connection forward. And just creating some space to bring in concentration, focus, improving your memory. And just creating a blank space to begin to take in some new or maybe some familiar information. Breathing out as you switch. And we're going to do one more, breathing in. Make sure you finish breathing out the left. Maybe the eyes are open or closed as you bring your hands down to your knees. And just start to practice some Brahmari breathing. So just starting to sit in that exhale, humming each breath, breathing in. And just allowing that Brahmari breath, that honeybee's breath, to wash away any and all distractions. So giving the mind an anchor point through sound, through the exhale. This breath is also good for serotonin and melatonin production. Improving memory and mood. And also supports in clearing the mind of negative thoughts. Sometimes when we're feeling overwhelmed, it can just literally come back down to the mindset of what we're giving the situation. Just letting this mantra of this exhale start to go more and more inward, almost letting it become a gentle whisper. Opening up the heart to just being with what is here. Each exhale, dropping deeper and deeper into the present moment as this exhale starts to go all the way inward. Take a few breaths. Start to notice your sit bones on the chair or whatever surface again. And as you exhale out the mouth, start to slowly open your eyes. Making your way back and into the room, taking a second to just look around. Maybe noticing where your pen, your notebook, maybe your water, your tea is. Seeing that you have everything you need in hand's distance. Maybe you need a blanket, maybe you need a pillow. I don't know what the temperature is in your room. But just seeing that everything you need, you already have. It's right here, right in front of you right now. All right, so now we're going to start to get into everything. I hope you enjoyed that breath. And you can build on it and make it your own practice. Because when you can start to pause and step back when you're feeling overwhelmed, you're going to start to be able to notice your subtle body cues. And when you can start to notice what your body is communicating to you before you need to go into that overwhelmed state, you may be able to step back sooner before it becomes this big escalated situation. Because the more that you focus on what's overwhelming to you, the more energy you give it, the more overwhelming it will continue to become. So sometimes it is about just completely stepping away from it and taking time to self-regulate. Auto-regulation is great, co-regulation is great, but when we're feeling overwhelmed, we really get to come back to self-regulation, and then you can go for co or auto-regulation. Because when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's up to you to be able to discern what it is that's overwhelming you. And auto regulation is great, right? Going out and doing a hike and maybe doing something like riding a bike or like calling a friend and going enjoying something that brings you pleasure, right? It's something that's still outside of you, right? So bringing it within yourself so that you can really discern, like, what is it that's overwhelming me? Am I fighting? Am I flighting? Am I freezing? How is my body responding? How am I moving forward through it? What am I enrolling to? What story is moving me forward? Am I shutting down? Am I feeling defeated? Do I want to give up? Do I feel like I need to sleep for 6 days and I just don't want to get out of bed? Because sometimes that's what overwhelming can also look like. It doesn't always need to look like you're all over the place and it's this chaotic tornado and it's just super destructive. It can also look like long periods of isolation when we're feeling overwhelmed too, and we need to withdraw. So it's really important to identify the ways that you feel and get overwhelmed, and then the way that you speak to yourself when you are feeling overwhelmed. And a lot of the times we do want to go to something outside of ourselves or another person, but they're not going to have the answer that you're going to have. Only you know what your core values are, and only you know what your personal boundaries are. Everyone else's boundaries are going to be different. Everyone else's ability to gauge, like, okay, what is my bandwidth, is going to be different. So, in taking that moment to begin to build a practice around pausing for stillness, pausing for inspiration, you're going to notice what really deserves your attention. And it even comes back to that story as well. So, what can stop you when feeling overwhelmed, right? Is like sometimes we can be overwhelmed due to people pleasing. We don't have the confidence in our yes and our no, and we're overcommitting ourselves. Sometimes we can get distracted and feel overwhelmed by life's problems and other people's problems and responsibilities, which is a really great way to keep ourselves distracted from what really is important for ourselves. We can feel overwhelmed due to fear and not know how to move forward and feel really unsure and like not certain and keep waiting for tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and that right condition, right? It might feel overwhelming to try to need to do things perfect or to boss ourselves around and demand ourselves on what we need, should, or we think what we have to be doing, instead of just doing what the only thing we can really do is just take one step at a time, instead of trying to take 6 steps forward, right? And then not getting anywhere. So it's really about knowing, where is it that I'm pulling myself in these places of feeling overwhelmed? Am I overcommitting myself because I fear saying no? Am I overcommitting myself because of yes, because I don't want to have FOMO and I don't want to feel like I'm missing out? Right? So again, it's like really important that when you're overwhelmed that you take that time to step back, then to just kind of move through the different ways that we can kind of cope through being overwhelmed, a lot being avoidant, right? Being too preoccupied to even sit down and be with it. Feeling anxious, low or high anxiety. These are all insecure attachment ways that we can show up. And when we're feeling overwhelmed, I can guarantee that we're showing up one way or another from an insecure attachment style. Whether we're giving all of our time away because we want to please other people, and then we forget that we're not, like, we get to aim to please ourselves, that we don't need to do things from force or obligation. That leads to cycles of also feeling overwhelmed and burnt out. So it is about having the right uses of your senses through that deeper space of listening and doing the self study and finding the contentment for where you are when you are overwhelmed, so that you can begin to allow yourself to even feel safe enough to sit with being overwhelmed. Because maybe before you constantly distracted yourself or poured yourself in other people's problems to not have to think about your problems, right? And at the end of the day, the only person that you really have responsibility for is you. And how do we learn how to sit with ourselves now? Can we sit down with ourselves in the middle of feeling super frustrated and be able to sit with it and not label it and identify it and judge it and start to attach to the I am frustrated? And can you just track how the frustration is feeling and what is frustrating you? Because when you can find out what it is that's frustrating you, or what it is that's holding you back, or what it is that keeps you procrastinating, without you becoming it, you can understand where it is that you're giving your power away. Because when you're feeling overwhelmed, right, you're not gauging your own energy and being discerning on where you get to either show up in your commitments, or you get to go with the flow and honor the feminine and allow yourself to be in that moment. So there's different energetics to feeling overwhelmed, such as there's the feminine side, that inspired impulse, which can feel overwhelming, right? Like, say you came across a really amazing opportunity and you just feel super called now to go on this vacation somewhere, but then all of a sudden the logic wants to kick in, right? But you feel really overwhelmed, but you want to make this choice and it feels really right and feels really exciting, right? And it feels really intuitive and synchronistic. Well, that's the feminine, right? And then, right, then there can be the fears and the things that can get overwhelming and come in the way, and the control patterns. Then you have the masculine energetics of what can feel overwhelming. And this is more of the structure, the commitments, the discipline. So it really does come back to your choices and how you choose to take care of your mental and emotional needs. Because if you're giving all of your time away because of people pleasing, it's like, where did you teach? Where did you learn that? And it's like, at the end of the day, every time that you say yes to something when you want to say no, the only person you're saying no to is yourself, right? And it's like, do you want to be telling yourself no on the things that actually bring you joy, because you rather say yes to the things that are going to give you instant gratification and pleasure in that moment? Right? Like, sometimes you might have to stand your ground and maybe ruffle up a little some feathers, and sit with that part that maybe feels a little bit of FOMO, or feels bad, or feels guilty on not around not being able to do something that you want to do, because what you really want to do is you want to honor a commitment for yourself. You get to feel empowered in honoring commitments for yourself and not guilty. And there's a lot of social programming out there around, like, guilt tripping and feeling bad, what story you are enrolling into. The people who love you, the people who are meant to be in your life, the people who respect you will understand. But it comes back to you respecting yourself first. So when we're feeling overwhelmed, only you can implement the boundaries. So if you're lacking boundaries, you really got to get clear in writing those boundaries down. And I wrote boundaries down in like 2017, and it's a good thing to reflect on. And when you start to implement boundaries, they're not what you're giving to other people, they're what you're honoring for yourself. So don't run around and tell everybody, well, I'm going to give you this boundary and I'm doing this for me. You're projecting. Get to tell yourself, I'm making this decision for me and I'm giving this reinforcement to myself because it's my personal responsibility. And it won't also feel so overwhelming on feeling that when you're taking the personal responsibility for yourself, that also someone else's happiness rides on that too. So you really get to look at, when you're feeling overwhelmed, am I doing the things that make me happy? Am I doing the things that I want to do? Am I doing the things that I'm choosing to do because I desire to do it? And if you're showing up from obligation and force, that is the fastest way to burn yourself out and to put yourself on a vicious cycle of feeling stuck on repeat over and over and over again. So when you can allow yourself to take time to self regulate, you can start to put the power back within yourself by stepping away and beginning to focus on a solution. And sometimes the solution is allowing yourself to completely accept yourself exactly for where you are. Oh, it's such a simple solution, right? Acceptance? No. But it's typically the solution for everything. But if you make it a practice when you're feeling overwhelmed, okay, I am here. It is what it is. Can I just sit with this right now? Like, cool. I don't need to do anything. I don't need to force myself to do anything. I don't need to honor what that inner critic is telling me that I need to be doing or calling me whatever name is coming up. Can you focus back on something that's more productive and more beneficial, like getting in a deeper relationship with that story? So don't let it pass on by. Let it come on up and then get in a conversation with it like you would with a younger sibling or a younger child, right? How would you talk to a little kid if you heard themselves being like, gosh, I don't know why I just can't figure this out. Every time I make a decision, I just continue to go back and forth, back and forth. I'm so dumb. Like, no, these are the things when we keep enrolling ourselves into those types of conversations, that's the experience that we keep creating, and that does feel really overwhelming. I would run away from that type of toxicity, right? And being hard on myself. I would want to go hide and go under a blanket or a cover for me just being on my own timeline and being hard on myself. So give yourself more grace. Accept where you are and just give yourself some grace. Let yourself have that cry or go take that bath and say, okay, when did I learn how to feel bad around making choices that excite me? So when you are feeling overwhelmed, it might feel really scary to start to say that yes or that no, but when you can make the choice to choose to be excited about it. Even if you feel fearful or unsure or whatever, but if you know that that's your choice and that's your clear choice to choose, accept however you're feeling, allow yourself to have the permission to go there and choose to feel excited. And then also, can you get above the situation even more and see that there's limitless resources out there that when one thing ends for you, it allows something new to begin in your own life as well as in someone else's. So you don't need to feel bad around walking away from things that aren't in your true joy here and now. It doesn't mean that it didn't once serve you and that you didn't enjoy it and that it didn't, pave part of your journey and your path, but it doesn't need to define your entire story. So when you are feeling overwhelmed, you very well might need to walk away and let things go and start to say no more and stand more in your truth. And, if we haven't done the inventory around shedding some of those relationships, this might be one of those areas where there is that growing pain of like, hey, like I'm focusing on myself. I'm committing this 1 hour a week to really nourish and get in my own space of self-care. And if people can't respect that, then they don't really need to be around. If their demands are more important than your own mental emotional needs, I think that in relationships, our mental emotional needs both get to serve priority and be, understanding and have compromises along the way as well without ever sacrificing yourself. So knowing the difference of when can I compromise and go and flow and be spontaneous and go in the direction that life is also encouraging me to go, while also still respecting the structure of my commitments as well. So it's not about being super rigid in all of the things that you're going to choose to do and that you are choosing to do, but it's also knowing what are my key players so that I can also choose to be spontaneous in a way that is in alignment with where I am desiring to go. What direction, what path am I leading? So I hope that makes sense on like, how can I make the choices? How can I still be in the moment? How can I say yes and no to all the things that I love to do because we have family, we have our businesses, we have our relationship with ourselves and with our loved ones, we have our friends, we have play, we have health, we have so many areas of core values to where life's overwhelming if we also only immerse ourselves in one of those areas too. If all we do is work, 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 and no play, that's going to have a layer of overwhelm. If all we do is play and we don't ever get any work done, well, now we're also going to feel overwhelmed, right? And if we're not taking care of ourselves, right, and we're not honoring our health, we might feel a little, disassociated, and we might not feel as healthy and in our body. And we might have other things like distractions of the mind. And I know that when I'm not eating that well, I can have a lot more like negative thoughts, and I can feel a lot more tired, and just the day can kind of be a little bit more dull because my body isn't feeling nourished based on like what I'm putting into it. So the same things, our thoughts, our actions, our relationships, our environments, our food, our lifestyle, these are all things that we take in from the outside world and determine how we feel. So we have to have a gauge on what it is that overwhelms yourself, right? So that you can start to step back and let those things go, whether it looks like saying a yes, looks like saying a no. When it comes to honoring your schedule, being able to plan ahead, time block, knowing what tasks you want to delegate and what's your bandwidth. Get to slow down and pour into your cup throughout the day, whether it is 3 minutes, 90 seconds to just shake your body before, like, going into an exercise, such as getting clear on what is my mission? What is my vision? Bring the sacred into it. And the sacredness is the pausing and the slowing down and the going inward and the tuning in and creating yourself to be that vortex for that frequency, right? Bringing the subtle divine feminine art into what you're creating, which means there is that contraction before the expansion, right? There is going to be that time of where you are going to be met with resistance when you are feeling overwhelmed. So we kind of looked at like, okay, what are the things that are overwhelming that might not be serving me? It's good to understand those things, right? Like maybe there's this friend that's just really needy and you always tell them yes, they have a problem all the time. And like you're a lover, you're a nurturer, you just want to hold space for their problem. But you know what? You don't have the space for their problem, and you want to say, hey, can I talk to you later? I need to get off the phone, and you're afraid to, right? So you need to know who your energy vampires are so that you can start to have more of those clear boundaries in place, so that you're not taking on things that you don't need. You need to detach from those things and let your friend know, like, hey, I got 5 minutes. I want to hold you through it, but right now I really got to honor a commitment for myself. It doesn't serve you to show up for your relationships or for your habits or your behaviors or your beliefs that don't serve you. Every time you show up for something that you know doesn't serve you, or you show up for something from an obligation or a forceful state, you're taking away your own personal peace of mind, and you're enabling the situation. Now, obviously, you can only take personal responsibility for what type of energy you want to enable. But when you really want to look at the bigger picture of it all, it doesn't serve anybody's higher good. It doesn't serve your highest good, and it doesn't serve their highest good. So you might have to put your foot down and kind of step more in that sharper mother-like energy that has more of that masculine, firm, assertive type. Like, I'm going to show up here to make this happen, right? So you can be in your la la, like go with the flow and dream big, and like just kind of be with the overwhelm and keep a light heart about the overwhelm. And then there's the time where you have to draw the line in the sand with your overwhelm. And you have to use your voice as the tool to be the thing that shakes up the energy and interrupts the pattern. And it's through self-regulation, because that's where you're going to hear yourself. That's where you're going to get those clear messages so that you know, okay, I can let that go. That doesn't serve me. Right. And then you can look at the part of where there's the contraction before the expansion. And you're going to experience feeling overwhelmed when you are growing through anything. There's growth spurts, growing pains. Little kids have them. We don't remember. We're too old now. But I've seen it with kids where the parents think their kids' feet are broken. I can't see them. They take them to the hospital, and the doctor's like, they're growing pains. And I was like, whoa, like, okay, that's pretty much what life is like. So if there's value on the other end of what you're feeling overwhelmed on, like I don't know where to begin. I'm so confused. I don't even know where to start. I'm so overwhelmed. I have anxiety, and I'm just going to find a million other things to do and keep myself completely preoccupied in everything else. Breathe, meditate, regulate, and take that first step of what feels most inspiring in the present moment without needing to know all the answers and the hows and the whens and the perfectionism, because that's most likely what's keeping you stuck in that overwhelm and that place of self doubt is that need to like control and know it all. The only thing that you know is what's right in front of you. That's the only thing that is a fact and that is given, period. Everything else, it can like tie into assumptions and catastrophizing and scenarios and fantasizing. Like there's a lot of pathways your mind can take you down. There's 60,000 plus thoughts a day. We've got to train that mind through self regulation. Otherwise, you're just going to be a monkey jumping from branch to branch, and life's going to just blow you around, and you're going to get lost in all the distractions of life and feel overwhelmed in that. And there are a lot of different things that can pull us in other directions. So until you identify what your core values are, until you identify what your personal boundaries are and what your commitments are to yourself, it's going to be hard to know how to say your yes and your no and to feel empowered in doing so and not feeling bad or guilty. You get to feel excited every time you say yes. You get to feel excited every single time you say no, because that is your sovereign birthright to be able to say yes or no. That is your free will to make that choice to choose to do so. And nobody can tell you how to feel differently about it. There might be people that will want to guilt trip you about it. However, they choose to feel is on them. You can't make anybody feel offended unless you like actually went up to someone and did something and called them a name or physically like crossed a boundary. There's gray areas there. But other than that, if you're making the choice to choose yourself and to choose yourself from a place of self-love, that is the choice that always is worth it. And that is the only choice that matters. It doesn't matter if anybody else wants to try to tell you that you're being selfish. Because every time that you give your power away and lead to things that leave you feeling overwhelmed, the only person that you're ignoring and abandoning is yourself. So it's okay to, when you're maybe know that you're going into some of these seasons, understanding your subtle body cues, knowing what you need through listening to your needs, you'll be able to communicate that in your relationships, because they're not going to know like where you are and what you are, what's going on in your life and what your main goals are. So you really have to know what you need first and what systems you need to put in place that really hold you, so that you can also have clear communication in your relationships as well. And the ones that are meant to be will be with you at the end of the day, So especially if, taking time for yourself and saying no is like a little scary for you, it's a really powerful edge to lean into, because you're the only person that literally can create your entire day. No one else is ever with you that much. So you really get to make being with yourself a fun process. Self-regulation doesn't need to be all like super like meditative and transcendental. Like it could be fun and silly, and you could be dancing and singing, and it doesn't need to be perfect and have choreograph and like great Celine Dion vocal tones. Like you get to have fun with how you want to self-regulate and get in your body. But meeting your emotions and meeting the mindset that you're enrolling to is going to allow you to really show up in your mission and in your vision, because you get to be your compassionate leader.